All right. Good morning. That gives you a little taste. You can clap. I don't know. It's a good morning. Clap. Why not? A little warmer. That gives you a little taste of this past year and what you all have been a part of. That's wonderful. If you are a guest this morning, thank you so very much for being here. Whether you are tuning in online, welcome to everybody tuning in online or on demand, or if you're out in the atrium, thank you for being here today. And I want to just give a special welcome to everybody. And this is a space, if you are new, really that cares deeply about people who feel spiritually disconnected, maybe disenfranchised by their faith experience, their church experience, or maybe in a space of deconstructing their faith, which is healthy. We should all be doing that all the time. That's called thinking. So it's the fancy word for thinking, by the way, deconstruction. So feel free to do that anytime you want. So my name is Ryan. I'm the lead pastor here at Crossroads. My pronouns are he, him. I am a white, cisgender, heterosexual man who has really benefited from systems that have favored people like me. And as a follower of Jesus, I believe naming those privileges and leveraging them for others is the start of a life committed to this peacemaking and to justice, or what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven. So, whoever you are, wherever you are, however you've come into this space, whether you are certain or whether you're skeptical or you're hopeful or you're hurting, whatever it might be, you're welcome here. And I do hope that you will join us. I hope that you'll walk this peacemaking path with us, and that you'll find this to be a space where questions are welcomed, and we love it. That's the beauty of life, the questions, not the answers, right? I want to make sure everybody draw your attention over here to the left. If you're online, you can't see this, sorry, but to the left, you'll see a little banner that our partners over at Edmondson Elementary made for you all. Many of you might not know we have had a long-time partnership with Edmondson Elementary School, which continues on. They had an event here. They made that nice banner. I want to encourage you today, before you run out for the awesome snacks during the after party, go check it out, because each one of those little hearts, there's a little note that people wrote to you all. And so go over and check that out for sure. How many of you made it out to the Loveland Festival of Lights this past weekend? Anybody go? Anybody go? Yeah, it was kind of wild night out there. Whew, lots of people. So we had a lot of fun. We stopped out. I do think that I'm just going to say this, like, the tree lighting for myself was a little anticlimactic. It was kind of like, and you're like, everybody's around, and I thought maybe a few more lights on the tree, but whatever, it was great, it was fun. So thanks to everybody that put that on in downtown Loveland, and for folks that went out. I heard a quote this week that I've heard before, and it kind of got me thinking, and you might have heard it, but it's this quote that says, "What you are not changing, you are choosing." What you're not changing, you're choosing. How many of you have ever heard that quote before this moment? What you're not changing, you're choosing. It's one of those quotes, one of those lines that kind of gets under your skin, because it's like super judgy, right? Like you don't know me. Like you don't even know who wrote it or where it came from, but you immediately get defensive. You don't know my life. You don't know my story. You don't know what I'm going through right now. And we get defensive of this statement, right? Because it's true, right? And the truth can do that. The truth can set you free, but it can also be really, really difficult at times. And I heard that this week, and I just started thinking about my own life. I started thinking about our church, and I just started thinking there's so much truth to that reality, that what we're not changing, we're choosing. And there are things that we choose that we keep and we don't change because they're wonderful, right? And there are things that we change because we know this is holding me back from a preferred future, from a vision. And then there are those things that we know we don't want to maintain, we know we don't want to choose, but we also don't feel like we have the bandwidth or the capacity to change them. And this quote really speaks to this idea that if we aren't intentionally shaping our future, the future will shape itself, right? We can happen to the future, or the future can happen to us. And if we're not moving forward on purpose, we're really kind of drifting by accident. And we all have sectors of our lives, spheres, right? And there are certain seasons of life where we're like, you know what? I'm very happy to just let the river take me on this one. And then there's those moments where we're glad, we're going with the river, this is one. And then there's those things where I got to swim upstream, right? But if we're not really thinking about where we're going, if we're not focused, if there's not a measure of intent, then we tend to just be kind of drifting, and we find ourselves in spaces by accident. Sometimes a happy accident, and sometimes a not so happy accident. And that got me thinking a little bit this week about driving. I'm getting ready to get in the car and take a 25-hour drive with 3 dogs and 2 adult children in a little car. It's going to be super fun. And I started thinking about like cars, right? And I was cleaning out a car yesterday, and I started thinking like, you got a rear view mirror in a car for a reason, right? And you've got side mirrors in a car for a reason. But nobody gets where they're going by staring at those mirrors, right? We cannot get where we're going if our eyes are fixed on the rearview mirror, or if our eyes are fixed on the side mirrors, or if you're fancy and have one of those backup cameras, you're like, what's a rearview mirror, Ryan? Welcome to the 21st. I'm still like this. I don't trust the mirror. I'm like, what is going on, right? And we need those mirrors, absolutely, but that's not where we're headed. That's not where the story is headed. So every car, every driver, every journey is designed for one primary direction: forward, right? We don't build cars thinking we're going to spend a lot of time in reverse, right? We have one gear for reverse, right? Nobody's upshifting or downshifting in reverse, right? And you think about your windshield, right? Your windshield is huge compared to those little mirrors. And that really kind of gets me thinking about like what we're talking about today. And this idea of being future thinking, of our gratitude for the future. Sometimes we don't think about gratitude as a future forward thinking, right? Because gratitude, oftentimes we are looking backward. That's what we did last week. Right? But gratitude, right, when we think of it as a forward activity, when we look into the future and we can hold gratitude and hold space for what we believe can be or for what will be, right, that keeps us moving towards hope. That's what opens up our imaginations to possibilities. It's what tunes our hearts to what the divine is doing in us and through us, what love is calling us into. And so last week we looked back. Last week we spent this time thinking about gratitude, and we looked back with these open hearts, with big eyes, with gratitude. We celebrated how this community, how you all have showed up in our values and in our partnerships, like with the Edmondson School, how we lived into wisdom and inclusion and creativity and fun and generosity, and we named those moments, the big ones and the small ones, and we honored that hard work. We honored that generosity. We honored the courage. We honored the faithfulness. And we talked about that beautiful image of a firefly, right? The gratitude is like a firefly. And some of y'all don't know what a firefly is. I know that, but I've been told again that they're migrating to Colorado. They've evolved, and they can now withstand the altitude, right? The lack of oxygen. We won't be able to. In about 5,000 years, it'll just be fireflies up here, I don't know. And we talked about that like, when we express gratitude, when we function in a space of gratitude, we're this kind of flash of light, we're a pulse of hope. And it reminds us, even in the darkness, that goodness is still here. And we celebrated how our community, right, we've been glowing with gratitude, and we've illuminated dark spaces. And we reminded each other that love is at work. Love is at work through us. Love is at work in our choices and in our programs and in our partnerships. And we talked about how we created these kind of constellations of hope, and we need to do that. We need the memory of divine faithfulness in our lives. We need the memory of our own faithfulness. We need the memory. We need that. We need the rearview mirror. We need those side mirrors. But today, we want to make a shift. And I feel like I can make a shift. I wasn't sure what this talk was going to be today until after last week, It was like, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But we have to turn and always think about gratitude for the future. Because if gratitude only looks backwards, it just becomes nostalgia. Nostalgia is not bad. But really, when you think about it, if all we're doing is sitting around like looking at the past, right, where are we actually headed? If gratitude can't look forward, then we don't have vision. But see, vision is gratitude forward-facing. Right? Vision is gratitude forward-facing. So like we talked about this car, like imagine leaving here today, and if you have to drive home, and I know some of you can walk here and ride a bike, and I'm really sorry that might change. And others of you are like, well, I'm going to get to ride a bike now, So you all can get together and fight in private about that. I totally get it, Do sleepover, slumber parties on Saturday nights, But like if we think about, like, you go to your car, imagine trying to drive home but only looking in the rearview mirror. Right? You would see where you've been, but it'd be really tough to get where you're going. Or imagine like staring into the side mirrors the whole time and just watching the cars that are next to you, right? Like, who's behind us? Who's in our blind spot? Is it necessary? You're going to have to look in your rearview mirror? Yeah. You're going to have to look in your side mirror. Absolutely necessary. But only in proportion, right? Only in proportion. The mirrors don't show us the destination. They're just reference points. Too much mirror, not enough windshield, and you come up with 3 problems. Too much mirror, not enough windshield, and we get these 3 problems. First, we mistake the past for the plan. How many of y'all have ever heard this statement, like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results? Yeah, been living that, right? But that's this idea. We start thinking that the best things and the only way to do things are the way we did it before that brought success. Right? And so we start thinking that the best things that the divine has done through us or in our homes or in our marriages or in our churches or in our finances are behind us. That's what happens when we spend too much time, not the right proportion, in the rearview mirror and the side mirrors as opposed to the windshield. Second thing is, I don't know about you, but you get stuck comparing yourselves to others. Y'all ever done that? Y'all ever compared yourself to others? How's that work out? Never good. Comparison leads to 2 things, right? What does it lead to? 2 things. Comparison will lead you to a place of pride and arrogance, or it'll just lead to a place of self-defeat. If we're always comparing ourselves, but that's what happens when we spend all of our time in the side view mirrors, then it becomes a scoreboard. Who's doing better in life? Who's got the better car? What church is bigger? Who's got more money? What church is louder? What church is smaller? What church is with this? We can look in those mirrors too much. And the third thing that happens, if all we do is spend our time looking in the mirrors, is we lose courage. Mirrors only show us what has been. They only tell us where we've been. They don't tell us what can be. And sometimes it does take courage to look at where we've been, but it takes a lot more courage to imagine where we can go in any area of our lives. Forget about just the church, but in your marriage, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a great-grandparent, as a single person, right? To have vision takes courage to live into something new. And here's the truth, I think, for all of our lives. The truth, I think, for our church is that the divine dream that's been at work inside of our lives, inside of your life, inside of this church is not behind us. It's ahead of us. Right? What love wants to do through you in your own individual life, in your career, in your finances, in your family, whatever that looks like, in our church, right? There's always more ahead of us. It's through the windshield. It's on the horizon. And so gratitude helps us look back honestly, for sure. But faith and courage helps us look forward boldly, believing that there is more. Now, the Apostle Paul gives us language for stuff like this. You're in church, we should have some churchy language, right? Some of you'd be disappointed if I didn't throw out some churchy language, right? So if you're not familiar with the Apostle Paul, he's a complicated figure. In the New Testament, we have letters that are thought to be written by him authentically, and we have letters that are thought maybe not to be written by him. Some scholars, ones that I tend to fall in line with, believe that you have like Paul, you have pseudo-Paul, so people who are carrying on Paul's tradition, writing in Paul's name, and you actually have some letters that are very anti-Paul, that are actually in total contradiction to things that Paul had said in his authentic letters. So as the church, I don't know if you know this or not, but as a church develops, power becomes like a part of that infrastructure. Maybe not. Okay, good for you. Don't hold your breath, okay? And so what happens as the church grows and as like the movement happens, there's structures that get into place, and then people start freaking out about this idea that women and slaves and men are all the same. And so you start to see like kind of the undoing of some of Paul's radical views very early on. And so Paul is oftentimes attributed as this person who kind of founded Christianity, right? Jesus, I think, would, if he were in a grave, he'd roll over in it. Right? Some of you will get that on the way home. It's a resurrection joke. No? Okay. You can vote in the offering, I guess. I don't know for that joke. I'll retire it. Right? But like this idea that a religion would have started in his name, I think he would be like freaking out, probably is. But Paul writes in one of his letters, this letter, Philippians. It's a beautiful letter. If you've never read Philippians, I encourage you to read it. It's got some really beautiful poetry in it, beautiful imagery. Paul's really kind of encouraging the Philippians to, hey, this is the way life can be. This is the way life can be. In Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, he writes this to this little church that has started in Philippi. He says, he who began a good work in you will carry it out unto completion. Now, Paul is using theological language that made sense in his world and at his time, and so we shouldn't get caught up on pronouns for God, things like that. We should recognize that those were like implanted into the way of being and thinking, right? But God is genderful. We've talked about that. But what Paul is saying in the theological language of his day is this real deep truth that God, the divine love, is not finished with you. He's saying to the Philippians church, like, it's not over, that God is working. God's not finished with you. God's not finished with your church, your home church, your community. He's saying God is not going to abandon what God begins. That when we surrender ourselves to love, love does not abandon us. And that same divine love that sparks something beautiful in the past of the church in Philippi is the divine spirit that sustains us right now in the present and will surprise us in the future if we'll live open-hearted to it. And that's what Paul's driving home. Paul's not giving us wishful thinking. Paul has like deep spiritual confidence in his own lived experience, his own realities of encounter with this divine reality, of reshaping his thoughts. Like, total side note, but just fun to think about for those of you that are like Bible people and you know the story of Paul. Do you know that Paul had to become a sinner if he was ever going to find salvation? Like his whole story and what happens to him, like Paul actually becomes everything that he thought was wrong in the world, and in that finds freedom and finds Jesus. Like it was only through becoming his definition of a sinner, his definition of a person who was opposed to God, that he actually found salvation, that he actually found a future. It's a really powerful thought, right? Those things that we want to quickly judge, that we want to quickly say are outside of God, right? Paul had to like have this total reversal. Side note, back to the message. Paul kind of doubles down on this language in another letter that we have to the church in Ephesus. And in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, right? So remember in Philippians, he's saying, God doesn't abandon what God starts. God is not done with you. There's a future. There's vision. And in Ephesians chapter 3, he kind of closes out with this big blessing, this big benediction in this one section. And he says, now to him, now to God, now to the one, now to love, that is able to do immeasurably more than we could ask or imagine. I don't know about you, but I read this and I think, man, Paul's telling me that I have the freedom to imagine and to ask for things that I'd never thought possible. That I'm only limited really by my imagination. I'm only limited by what I will lean into. Like the way my family functions, the way my finances function, the way our church functions, like what these things can be in the world, the impact that they can have for others on myself is only limited by my imagination. And so Paul here he is refusing to let the Ephesus church shrink its vision to what it had already known. Right? He says, no. The divine is operating on a scale beyond your imagination. What love can do is beyond what you could ever imagine. When love becomes the central figure, the central animating force of your life, beyond what you could ever ask or imagine is what can happen. And you know what? Like history tells us this. When we look at history where love and forgiveness has taken over, when we look at the work of reconciliation that is taken at like national levels and global levels, where love has been like the predominant way in which like the Truth and Reconciliation Project of South Africa, like it shows us more than you could ever ask or imagine is possible when we lean into that. The horizon with love is bigger than the mirror of our past. It offers us incredible opportunities. And these verses, right, they tell us why gratitude for the future matters, because the divine Spirit that began the work is still carrying it out. The divine Spirit that animated Jesus, that Jesus embodied in all his ways, in his teachings, is still at work. Right? Scripture says it this way: the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you. And that reality, that love is drawing us into more, into different. Because hear this, hope is not a memory. Hope is a movement. We have big signs out there that say, hope is here. I told Jimmy we should get like a big old T and just put hope is there. Because hope is wherever you are. If you have a vision for love. Like hope is in your home if you have a vision for love and you welcome the neighbor. When you reach out, when you look at your coworkers who believe differently than you or who think differently than you, when you sit at the Thanksgiving table with family who share different values than you, when you put on those like that filter of love, that's where hope is. Like the idea that humility can change us and can change and reshape the way in which we interact with people is amazing. Can I say something that I probably shouldn't say? Because some of you are going to like freak out, okay? But listen to me. Like I don't share a whole lot of like political views with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Some I do, but most I don't. Do y'all know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is? Right? She is a child of God, everybody. Calm down, relax. But here's the thing, like over the last month, I've been like listening to her and watching her on shows and like, what is going on? Like my algorithm got so messed up, it didn't know what to do as it was trying to feed me hate. It was like, how? And while I still would disagree with many of the policies that she might represent, I can't tell you, like I had hope. I had hope that like one of the most divisive voices was saying, I'm sorry. I've participated in something and I've promoted a way of being that hasn't been helpful. Right? Like there's something about hope that like if we can trust in love and humility, right, that all of a sudden conversation can take place. And that doesn't mean we agree with everybody, right? But we come into this space where we can actually have vision and think about the future. Now, I have no idea what the heck is going on in the political world with people. No clue. I tend to be kind of jaded, thinking, oh, there's always a political reason for even an apology. But that's just cynicism, right? And I get that exists within me. But I say that to say, like, love and humility can transform a whole system, a whole way of being. And so today, I want to encourage us as people, as a church, to not just practice gratitude for where we've been, but practice gratitude for where we're going. And I don't mean that physically. I just mean that where is our vision taking us? We sat down a while ago and we thought about big dreams. What would 10 years look like? And these were kind of the dreams that came out of like right before COVID, like right in the middle of it. We didn't know what was happening at our church when it was going on, but we all sat down as a council and leaders, and we said, what are our big dreams? And one of the big dreams we said is we want to be a place that equips 10,000 peacemakers weekly. And we didn't know what that looked like. We certainly didn't think that meant here, but we said we believe deeply in this peacemaking spirituality, and in 10 years, we want to see 10,000 people engaging with us, being equipped to live as everyday normal peacemakers. And that was the dream, and it still is the dream. That whether it's in person here in a building, whether it's online, whether it's in classrooms, whether it's through an early learning center, through a digital space that is developed as part of our future, whether it's on playgrounds, wherever it might be, we want to see 10,000 people actively being shaped into everyday normal peacemakers, people that diffuse conflict, that build bridges, that heal relationships, that practice compassion, that listen deeply, that create belonging for everyone. People shaped in the way of Jesus, the ultimate peacemaker. Like that was, and I'm telling you, we've over the last few years at times thought about that 10-year dream and been like, is that realistic? And we've just held on to it. Not because we think 10,000 is some magic number, but just because we just believe in growth. We believe in what we do here. And so today, I want to give thanks for that 10,000 people. I want to give thanks today for that there will come a time where we as a church and the materials that we produce and the fresh perspective materials are reaching 10,000 people and creating fresh and new ways of imagining what does it mean to follow Jesus that isn't based on certainty and doctrine and dogma and rules, but is based on love and inclusion and mystery and asking the big questions and people being able to answer them differently. And if we act with gratitude right now, that's courage, and that's an element of faith. Another thing that we dreamed about a few years ago, we dreamed that we would one day be investing $1 million every year into our Partners in Hope ministry. And that the majority of that would be given away in grants to our partners that are rewriting the 5 unacceptable truths with us. I pointed because I thought they were up there, but they're not up there. And we thought about that dream a long time ago. And we thought this, and we've looked at that dream and we've said, I don't know, like, how does that happen? Like, we're not seeing us moving in the right direction necessarily. But we just believe that's something to work towards. That we can, through creative means and through ways we could actually do that we could see $1 million given to our Partners in Hope ministry. And that ministry be self-sustaining and function like its own little nonprofit that can grant out money and work with partners that are committed to the same things we are. So today, we give thanks for how those donations and for how the programs and how the partnerships of volunteering, how all those things will create families that are stabilized with a home because they're living in insecure housing right now. We're believing that kids and people will be fed through our partners in greater ways because of us. That seniors can be supported and not feel lonely. That mental health resources can be expanded. That community partners can be strengthened. That queer bodies will be loved and fully affirmed through our partnerships. And we just want to be grateful for that vision. Grateful that we can participate in that. And generosity is peacemaking. It's love in a financial form. It's the way in which we give of ourselves when we volunteer to put on events that raise money, when we give in our own ways, when we volunteer in those spaces. And we want to be grateful. We want to give thanks for the future of our work with the next generation. One thing we love to say around here is that peacemaking begins on the playground. And we are committed to believing that there is a future for our Adventure Center, whatever that looks like. We don't know. Through our camps, through our preschool, through our weekend programming. We want to break the cycle of religious trauma. We want to break the cycle of teaching children that they are somehow fundamentally flawed. We want to break the cycle that kids learn that God will only be with them, that they could only have a relationship with God if they'll recognize how terrible they are. And we find that to be abusive and not Jesus at all. And so creating the space where staff and families and children learn peacemaking early in life, a generation that is formed in kindness and compassion and wisdom and inclusivity, what we call here the peacemaking path of Jesus. And I am grateful for that. I'm grateful for the vision of knowing that kids are learning conflict resolution before they learn division. That they are learning that they are loved, that every person around them is loved fully. I'm grateful for that. And I can imagine a generation that is raised in a culture of peacemaking, that is not afraid of other faith traditions, that is not afraid of God, but that is able to discern and see God at work all around us. And so we give thanks for that right now. And in all of these things, I have a heart full of gratitude. I have a heart full of gratitude for the impact that our church can have, that you all can have, that I can have as not just an individual peacemaker in my everyday normal life, but as a community that comes together. I give thanks for the impact that we can have in partnering with our local communities, of partnering with the cities of Loveland, Fort Collins, the surrounding cities, like being in partnership and participating in what God is already doing in our communities. I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful today that we are a unique light in northern Colorado, and that we can continue to be a unique light. One thing I hate, can I just tell you what I hate? I hate that when people move from here, they say, I need to find a church like this, and they can't. I hate it when people show up here and say, I've gone to 25 churches, and I can't find another one like this. I hate that. To me, that's sad. Yeah, I love the fact that we're doing something unique, but it's sad that if somebody moves, they don't have a community like this. And I'm praying for a vision that goes beyond this one space, that we would become the normative experience of Christianity. And they're out there. What makes us unique is we have haze machines and moving lights with our theology. And I wear a baseball hat. Like at the end of the day, like that's what makes us unique, everybody, right? And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for hopeful towards a ripple effect that we can have in our partnerships. And that we can see more peacemaking, and we can see our peacemaking path reaching across the world. And we give thanks before we arrive, before we get there, because gratitude is how you prepare your heart to act and live towards what you are called into. And so the invitation this morning to all of us, tuning in online, sitting in the room, at home, already starting to bake for Thanksgiving, the invitation that we all have in this pivotal moment in the life of our church is to be all in. Is to see ourselves as fireflies coming together, each in our unique way, shining our light at our unique time, in our unique space. And so I just want to invite you to not be all in mindlessly. Ask tough questions. We're all asking tough questions about the future. Those are good questions, right? But be all in where we are going. Be all in that vision of peacemaking, of partnerships, of growth, of new ways of imagining church. That's the invitation, to bring your light, to be a part of this peacemaking movement, to glow together, and to recognize that when we do that, right, like we can shift and shape and we can light the darkness. One of the ways that we do that, and we started this last year, was with this 2-year Peace is Worth It initiative. Like we recognized this very unique moment that we were in, and you all have showed up. We've shown up. Like I'm going to say you all because I did too, because I'm with us, right? Like, and we've been giving generously to have the time to make the decisions, the wise decisions, to do our part. And so over the next few weeks, like next week, you're going to get to hear all about the second year of our Peace is Worth It initiative. And our Peace is Worth It initiative, interestingly enough, has been called a unique light. That we believe we're called to be a unique light in this space, in this community. And when we started this a year ago, we were just kind of like building the airplane in the air, which is not a good idea, is it, Jeff? Not a good idea to build the plane while you're flying it. But we knew we wanted to be a unique light. We didn't know how that light was going to shine. We didn't know what it was going to look like. And we're just trying to follow what we think is wisdom. And so we continue in this process, and we shared this a little bit when we went over the budget last year, is that our goal for the Unique Light for this 2-year campaign is in the next 6 months to raise $150,000 as we transition. And that's less money than we gave last year. Can I get an amen? I thought I'd get a bigger amen than that from you all. I know I gave it an amen. I was like, amen. But it's in a shorter period of time. So we gave ourselves a year last year, and we raised a little over $212,000, which is amazing. And our goal is to, we got to raise $150,000 to cash flow this crazy change. And so you'll hear more about that. But I also want to encourage you that financial giving, that's one way, but there's going to be all kinds of opportunities to participate in our future. Just like there are ways right now. You don't have to wait, by the way. If you want to see an area of our church strengthened, feel free to jump in right now, okay? Don't need to wait till the moving truck shows up, okay? But there's going to be all kinds of opportunities that we can participate and we can be all in, and you can bring your light. Because remember, one firefly is beautiful. Boop. A field of fireflies is breathtaking. A movement of fireflies can change a whole landscape, can change a whole ecosystem. And so last week, gratitude helped us look back. This week, gratitude lifts our eyes up to the horizon, because the Spirit of Jesus began a good work here in this community, in this church, a long time ago. And the Spirit of Jesus is still at work here. And the Spirit of Jesus will carry this work forward. And if we will walk in the Spirit of Jesus with courage, with generosity, with wisdom, I believe that we will do more than we could ever ask or imagine. So, I want to encourage us to look through the windshield, to keep our eyes on the rearview mirror, to check the side mirrors every now and then, but to move towards the horizon. And let's trust that the divine love, who is guiding us forward, is still guiding us to be fireflies lighting the darkness together. Because what we're not changing, we're choosing, both collectively and as individuals. So, as we come to the communion table today, which is a very personal experience, yet a community experience, I just invite you to consider your own life. What are you choosing rather than changing? Is there an area in your life? Is there an area of your relationships? Is there a friendship? Is there a space in your family? Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your own personal growth and education. Maybe it's your spiritual life. Whatever. I have no idea. But is there an area of your life that you have been accepting? And you know what? When I said what you're not changing, you're choosing, you were like, oh man. And it came to your mind. And the Spirit is whispering to you, take courage. Take courage. Get vision. Make one little decision at a time. And trust. Trust that you don't have to have it all figured out. Trust that the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you and will give you just the wisdom that you need at just the right moment. And so today, everyone is welcome to come to the tables. Your tables are communion elements, the bread and the juice. And we're going to sing this song together that says, I'll give thanks to God when I don't have enough. Y'all ever live in a space where you don't have enough? It feels like that. And then the song says, because love's more than enough. And then there's a beautiful bridge that says, why do I worry? Why do I worry? One more time, why do I worry? Love knows what I need. And so in those spaces of your life where you feel like the Spirit is whispering to you, take courage, stop choosing and start changing. In the spaces in our church where we are stopping, choosing, and starting changing, we can trust that we don't have to worry. Love knows what we need, and we can live in that space. So I'm going to invite you to stand as we sing this song if you're willing to and if you're able. I'm going to invite those of you in the bleachers and on the sides to come. Remember, this is an open table. You just simply have to take and eat and drink. It's a moment where we honor the power of love, a power of a table that is set for everyone, wherever you are in your spiritual journey. The body of Christ broken for you, the blood of Christ shed for you.